Hello and welcome to Upside, where every week we dig behind the headlines that are going to affect European venture. Today it is Lomax, Eyal, and myself. And just to give Eyal a bit of an intro, Eyal Malinger, he's a software engineer by training, HBS trained, 10-year of VC, last with Berenjaya, and currently the co-founder of Resurge Growth Partners. Now, Eyal, I might have to ask you about this because you are a venture equity firm bridging the gap between VC and PE. And he's been in the biz for 25 years. He's a good buddy of mine. I love him dearly. I love sparring with you. But Eyal, how would you introduce yourself and tell us more about venture equity?
Absolutely. Dan, thank you for the intro. I think that was a great intro. And, I'm a tech geek at heart. I spent my career, started in technology, worked then in private equity and in venture. Having spent 10 years in venture, which I love dearly, it's an amazing place to be. I just saw a very big gap in the market. I work with many great companies for whom the venture model just was not the right model. As much as we love venture, not every company can become a unicorn. And I saw a lot of good businesses, good growth, good size, just getting stuck and being orphaned or graduating from the VC model, but they were not ready for a traditional private equity model. They never built what I call the EBITDA muscle. And so our thesis is how can we work with these companies to help them move from VC land to private equity land and to an exit. That's our focus. We do primary, we do secondary. We're very flexible in the way we approach cap tables. And that's what we call venture equity, the gap between VC and PE.
Loving it. It's a gap that needs serving, and there should be some more models that are around, is my personal take.
So you mainly exit to like buy out private equity. Is that right then?
To be frank, we will only do transactions where we believe that there is a probability, 10, 20, 25%, that a strategic will need and want to buy this business, but we underwrite to a private equity exit. And so in many ways, we underwrite to an EBITDA exit, but we hope for an ARR exit. So which also means we have to buy for the right price if we believe the likely buyer will be a private equity buyer paying 10, 15 times EBITDA.
Gentlemen, shall we crack on? Did you guys see the humanoid robots at the Spring Festival Gala in China? It felt like there was a seismic difference in what happened last year or even last month. There were 4 firms there. There's Unitree, Noetics, I think it's called, Magic Lab and Galbot. And they each paid for a slot because China is doing what they always do. They're subsidizing the market and then trying to throw as many different players in to compete as possible, like they did with EVs. Fun fact, Chinese firms now control around 90% of global humanoid market by shipment volume, which I know is tiny, but the Agibot is the market leader. I think they've shipped 5,000 units or so in 2025. What do we think of this new space? It looks super cool. Does Tesla's Optimus Prime stand the chance of these Chinese knockoffs? Actually, that's not, I take that back. They are not knockoffs, but this low-cost stock. Can Europe carve out a niche? We've got Neuro Robotics and OverSonic over here. I don't know what they're doing. Maybe one of you does. But Eyal, can you kick this one off? Did you see it? Did you see the robots dancing? And
I saw it. It is a mind-blowing video. For those of us listening or watching to us, run and watch it. It's one of the things that you will remember where you were first time you've seen that. It is, I saw that and my first thought was, that's it, game over. Those robots had no cables, no big battery packs, and what they were doing was just absolutely incredible. The second thought I had in my head was Clone Wars. Star Wars, for those who don't remember, tens of thousands of robots that are trained to go and kill the rebels, or I forget exactly what part of the movie that is. And the third thought was, oh, what a great idea. Have some children and give robots some swords and run around the children with swords. More seriously, if that is what is shown on prime time family television, the question I had in my mind was what is being produced and worked on in the military industrial complex? And what that is, it's going to be 10x more advanced or 100x more advanced. Couple that with incredible, unparalleled manufacturing capabilities, technological capabilities, supply chain capabilities. And suddenly the entire Clone Wars story becomes a reality. Now, I think Elon, I don't know if it would be our savior here, but him shifting production, he's closing X model production lines, he's closing S model production line, and shifting them to Optimus gives me a bit of hope. But really, this is about the brain and the metal. So the brain and a lot of the AI is at the moment dominated by the US, but the metal and the body of the robot at the moment, supply chains are, I think will be controlled by China. And the worry I have is if you think of it from a wider historical perspective, that level of military technology superiority will be very hard for someone not to use at some point once you have it. Once you have this decisive military tech. So it just worries me. I think it's a big, big wake-up call for Europe and the West in general to up their game
It
when it
is,
comes
but
to.
Eyal, just on that point for a minute, this is battlefield fear that you're talking about. I do wonder how much is actually going to be battlefield. And I sent you a video after we were talking about this off camera of the same robots, but with whatever, automatic weapons. And you're saying, I think that's probably AI. I've then seen other videos where I'm not quite sure it is AI. It looks like that they're jumping over things and shooting at targets, and there's swarms of these robots with these guns. But how much of warfare is going to be battlefield anyway?
So don't know if the video is AI or not AI, and I think it's irrelevant. I think what that video shows us is that if those robots can do that, they can do a lot more that they're not showing us. That will be highly, highly battlefield relevant. And if you're going to wage a war and you don't need to risk soldiers in the war, it's I think we're running quickly towards that. So I think while humanoid robots can do incredible things, right? Think about elderly care, where you have, a lot of people, and, if you can have a robot that can help you deal with those things, it'll be fantastic. I think part of the plan with Optimus is that every home will have one, and it's going to do all the homework, right? It's going to do all of the laundry and folding and cooking, whatever you need to do at the home. That is a positive thing. I think the thing we have to be mindful is that these robots can very, very easily be used for military purposes.
I think Eyal makes a great point, which is that, one of the great rate limiters of societies going to war historically has been, sending the flower of your youth, the young generation into battle politically was very, very expensive for people, right? So you better have a damn good reason before you do it. Now, I think if that goes away, then things do change. The only thing I would say is if you still have for example, nuclear deterrence in place, then you may end up with, if the cost of going to battle comes down in a kind of at the fringe, in a sort of more skirmish type context with these robotic warriors, you still have that kind of larger deterrence that sits there. So I don't know, but am I conjecturing that potentially skirmishes may increase, small scale, proliferate, but will ultimately mass destruction still kind of sit there with the deterrence and stop us from ultimately taking each other out completely? I don't know, but I would say it's very, very scary. In terms of Europe, I don't know where this leaves us. It's funny. I was talking to a robotics founder the other day at Seed, and he's just buying in the cheap. He's buying in 10 of these robots from China, right? And he's building the software, obviously. But as Eyal said, if this happens going forward, what's going to happen, and especially in the context of sovereignty, which everyone is obsessed with these days. So the Chinese get the cost of the hardware down to 5-10K a robot, probably even lower. The Optimus is going to price it. I don't know if Elon can get it down from 50 to 40 to 30. He'll probably be able to get it down, and he clearly has a massive advantage on the software side. So you kind of got that being built in the US. You've got the Chinese who will dominate on the hardware. What are the Europeans going to do? Try and write software to sit on top of the Chinese hardware? Maybe, logically, this is what this founder's doing. But then, of course, you've lost sovereignty because you haven't built the hardware capability in the first place. So if you do end up with a contretemps with the Chinese, then suddenly you don't have your hardware anymore.
No more firmware updates.
Make sure you bought. Yeah, exactly. So I think we're almost creating the next set of problems all over again, unless we're very, very careful. And I think Europe does have a couple of companies which you mentioned, so Neuro Robotics and OverSonic. But in the grand scheme of things, they've raised Series A, Series B, nothing like what's gone into this in China or in the US. So I do worry that yet again Europe is underinvesting in this capability, and it's being left behind.
Wonder how it will all fold out. I know that the H1 and G1s is between $6,000 and $10,000. The Chinese, the unitary
and that's going to come down. I mean, look what the Chinese did to solar panels. Look what they did to EVs. All this. It's not just the Chinese. Sorry, it's not a Chinese specific thing. It's just lots of capital goes into something, the price will come down. That will be a product of your investment unless you've misallocated it, right? So
I guess the only thing that's going to protect you is either tariffs on this stuff or this stuff coming into Europe, or that sovereign desire to build and design.
Yeah, which is what the US is doing at the moment with tariff on solar for different reasons. But yes, tariffs again, but then you end up with you end up with sort of second, third order problems as a result of that.
Would you both have a humanoid robot in your house doing the cleaning and washing and folding your laundry?
100% yes.
Straight in. Lomax, would you?
Yes, depends on the price. Don't forget that I live in Portugal, where cost of labor is very, very low. Yeah, depends.
So many questions, so many challenges. I want to talk more about hardware. So Raspberry Pi, the UK hardware company, their stocks flew up and have now settled a bit. I think it IPO'd on the LSE in June 24. So it feels like, I mean, the chatter was that the CEO bought some stock, even though it was a tiny amount. And then Reddit users looked like there was a bit of a pump and dump, talking about OpenClaw and Raspberry Pi. It was a nice thing because I'm a big fan of Raspberry Pi. And I'm a big fan of all of these kind of underdog hardware little stories. A tiny little computer if you haven't seen one. But gents, anything to see here? Is it a meme stock? Eyal, what do you reckon on this one?
So the question, I believe, is does OpenClaw mark the beginning of edge AI? Right? And are we going to start seeing more and more AI running at the edge? Now, people who are buying all the Mac Minis and Mac Studios, and people are buying many, many, many of them, are saying yes, or voting with the dollars, yes, right? We're going to buy those to run edge AI. Now, can you run OpenClaw on Raspberry? I spent some time reading. Answer is yes. So you can run Open Raspberry, but really OpenClaw is more of a gateway, right? There's not a lot of compute happening on the device. So I can see how it can be used, but it's not a one-to-one, it's not a one-to-one matching, right? But that's an interesting question. Now, that said, you're suddenly looking at Raspberry Pi and you see this is a ubiquitous platform used in everything from synthesizers to camera and everywhere. And it's trading for less than $1 billion market cap. And it made me think, is it undervalued? B, would it have been worth had it listed on the NASDAQ? I don't know.
Where do they're what, 800 million? Is it?
I think that's 600 million pounds EV.
600 million. Okay. I mean, but this is LSE stuff, right? So this is, you can easily multiply that by 10 if it was in the US. Meme stock time, Lomax. Isn't
this a time to celebrate that Europe has finally got its own meme stock?
GameStop, here we come. GameStop's still going.
Isn't it a sign of things maturing? I mean, maybe, I don't know. But jokes aside, no, look, I mean, this is a company that has had operational challenges over the last couple of years. So it does feel like it's in meme stock territory. But I think the edge AI point that Eyal raises is a very interesting one. Do you think that then if we run in more compute on the edge, this will have it's not going to have a meaningful impact and dent on energy costs or not? As in like,
I don't know. I don't know.
If you run, because if you run more and more edge, like AI on the edge, then you're kind of distributing the energy that's needed rather than concentrating it in these big data centers. I don't know. That's that would assume there's going to be a lot more compute on the edge.
No, we need Mads here for that one. I can't see. Yeah, I mean, I can't see that some of these models are so tiny. I mean, the Gemini's latest is operating on the iPhone, right? And that's a very battery hungry thing.
But I think there's been a lot of these talks about having more distributed edge compute and edge AI as a way to both power load, but also just in terms of where do you want to put those compute resources. So I think it's a positive development if that is what will happen.
Well, it also means that you don't have to worry so much about security, control, access, and all of those challenges that you have when everything is being transmitted up and down or left and right. So I don't know. It kind of leads on to the next stories that caught my eye this week about AI just basically just causing a bit of a fuss. So we have intense workloads in the Bay. So there are a few stories this week about 996 and grindcore and all of these things where people are working every hour that God sends to build these AI businesses. A KPMG partner was fined for cheating using AI. I'm not quite sure why that was a headline, but I think there are maybe some more depth behind that. Anthropic and the Pentagon are falling out over usage and can and should AI be used against the people. I think that's probably a worthy argument. So I don't know where we would want to take this. But it feels like, and I know this is obviously easy click rage and AI is still main news cycle. So the news likes to pick up on this click ragey stuff. But which one would you pick up on first and what caught your eye on in this bucket?
So I'll start from Anthropic because I think it links really neatly to the first topic we talked about. And that is basically what Anthropic were saying is that we do not want our models to be used to let the computer autonomously decide on kill decision or on a attack decision. Now, I think from a moral compass, corporate moral compass perspective, it's beautiful, right? But it's beautiful right until the point when your adversary autonomous drone doesn't have one. And that's a problem here, right? Palantir gets it, right? You maintain peace through technological superiority, not pristine ethics. And I remember I was in business school and we had this like hours of waffle about corporate accountability and morals. And by the way, I believe in them. But I remember thinking to myself, is that all of those, me coming from Israel at the point in time, all of those Westerners keeping talking and they had this luxury to adhere to those beautiful moral values. But the real world, where the other 7 billion people live, don't really play by the same rules. And I think, I found this quote from Alex Karp from Palantir, and he says, our adversaries will not pause to indulge on theatrical debate. I love it. Theatrical debate about the merits of developing technologies with critical military application. They will proceed.
This is a debate that we've had a few times on this pod, is that actually that was all a front and this stuff went on behind the scenes regardless. And there was this political facade, and all Trump has done effectively, because I'm kind of blaming him for everything, is just put everything out on the kitchen table. So all of this stuff was going on. The politicians would say their piece, but actually there was some pretty heinous stuff going on behind the scenes. So maybe it just feels like this is just a never-ending spiral of decay then. It feels like if you're thinking that they're thinking that you're thinking, then we're just going to build these horrific war machines, unless Dario or somebody goes, I don't want my technology being used.
I don't think Dario, I think Dario's trying to have his cake and eat it here. He wants to sell and make money out of the US defense budget. But at the same time, he doesn't want to live with the moral burden of knowing that his AI was used in autonomous weapon systems or used to spy on, their own citizens. I'm sorry, he is trying to have his cake and eat it. It's very, very simple. The world has just moved on, and you can blame Trump, maybe not. It's just a natural progression of things. It's partly the rise of China. And I'm afraid, the context has changed. And so if you want to be a software company working for the US government, you want to win those contracts, the US government as the customer is going to do what it needs to do to protect its people. And so I'm afraid I actually, much as I admire and love Anthropic as a company, I'm not with them on this one.
I think that's fair. It's just like, we've all got young children, and just thinking what kind of a world are we bringing them into, and technology and AI, and how do all these bits connect? Again, we will see. I saw that OpenAI have hired Peter Steinberger. He had a pop at the EU. Lomax, did you have any thoughts on this?
Well, I don't have any thoughts, because I do my fair bit of EU and UK bashing, particularly when it comes to technology and investment. But Peter Steinberger's not held back at all. So famously behind OpenClaw, has been poached or hired or gone to join OpenAI, basically saying, I'm all in 996. I want to build agents that my mum can use. In the US, people are optimistic. They get behind you. They are, about the art of the possible. What could go right? The Europeans want to hold me back. They don't want me to work too hard. They're worried that I'm going to burn out. OpenAI has all this amazing talent that will work 6 to 7 days a week with me. Amen to that. So he's off. That was pretty quick.
Yeah, I was always wondering who was courting it.
It's funny.
I thought Apple would be.
It's funny because
present.
it's basically as quick as the whole OpenClaw Peter Steinberger thing kind of happened, and everyone was celebrating, and people were organizing meetups around Europe. And actually, it was a moment 2 weeks ago, maybe talked about it here, that Europe could actually stand up and be like, "Oh, this is pretty cool. This normally doesn't happen in Europe." But the moment it happens, within a fortnight, he's already off to the West Coast. It's like, guys, I thought things had got better. But it kind of reminds you, and I put out a message, a tweet, whatever, this week, sort of saying that if you go into European Twitter or European LinkedIn at the moment, everyone's getting very excited about the Series A's, the Series B's, the Series C's, the 50 mil, the 100 mil, the 150 mil, the 200 mil rounds. But hang on a minute, that is better than 5 years ago. But look what's happening in the US with Anthropic raising 30 billion, with OpenAI trying to raise 100 billion now. Do you know what I mean? The goalpost keeps changing, and I don't want us. We're supposed to be an optimistic pod, but Steinberger was just yet another example where we can't retain, a particularly pretty special dude, I would say, from what he's done.
Yeah.
Look,
well,
I think that in the discussion we had before, Dan, you mentioned that, immediately Sam Altman called him, and Zuck called him, and Dario called him, and all said, come work for us. And how come no one from Europe called him? And
Maybe
I think your answer was maybe they did, but who would have called him? Who could have called him to get him excited enough?
Oh, do you know who would have called him?
What?
Jan LeCun.
Yeah, Anakin maybe,
Yeah,
or like, you know, all the deep mind guys in London. I don't know.
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, DeepMind's Google,
Or the
really.
DeepMind
So he'd
guys.
have been
And I
shipped
think,
off over there.
and look, I think as much as we love Euro bashing, right? I think the question is, it's really also about ecosystem and geography. I believe the guy was based in Austria,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, he's Austrian, yeah.
And I love Austria. We had one of our best exits in Austria, some great companies there. However, if I were to start and invest in an AI company, I don't know if that were my first choice. So the question again is hypothetical. If Peter were based in London, would he have told these guys, I love what you're doing, give me the money, let me build $1 billion AI center here because I have the talent, I have the labor laws, I have everything I need in order to develop this here. And it made me think, again, I'm in Israel right now for a few days. There have been many cases similar where when that happened, the people did not necessarily relocate. Some did, but many of them brought the money here to build here because the talent and ecosystem and capital were here. And so I think the takeaway for Europe is more what can we do from a regulatory, from a government perspective to enable more ecosystem, right? Labor laws, ease of opening a company. It's all of the soft things that I think are regulation, GDPR, that are holding innovation back that can be unlocked at the government level. I always give them as an example. Why do we have such an amazing fintech ecosystem in the UK? And I believe one of the reasons is because the FCA had the sandbox. It had the regulatory framework to enable fintech companies to grow and thrive and break things without breaking too many things in the UK. We have to do something like that with the AI world in Europe to have any standing chance against other companies.
Talking about, I mean, I saw that Andreessen were setting up in Sweden, I think. So you don't have to have that many things going on in a territory to start getting some American interest. I'm not sure what's anecdotal and what's the reality of that, but I think there are, and they over the last maybe 5-10 years have changed some of their taxation and some of their structural laws to make it much easier to invest in the flow of capital in Sweden to happen. So I think, you know, I think also we are going to talk a little bit about the Munich Security Conference, which also brought up some of these kinds of themes. So it feels like it's happening, but you know, obviously, if the Americans are running at a rate of knots in that direction, it's always going to be Europe playing catch up.
So 11 Labs did pre-seed in London, and then, you know, A16Z got on the phone, flew over the next day, you know, had actually tested out the product before they met the founders, which basically no one in Europe had done, and took the deal off the table, very quickly by all accounts. So I think like there is just something in the water that we still don't quite get in Europe when it comes to that velocity and speed. I think it's changing, and there are clearly like exceptions to the rule. And maybe it's a sort of nice irony or juxtaposition is that Andreas Klinger is also Austrian, right? And he's the kind of big proponent of EU Inc. So actually, I hope, you know, maybe he took Peter behind closed doors and was like, come on, man, you know, what are you up to? But things are moving slowly. But to add to what you were saying, Eyal, around, you know, labor laws, etc. I mean, capital, weight of capital is a big one. It's just huge walls of money in the US that we're
I think it just comes up every week, doesn't it?
Sorry.
Lomax, we're always talking about how do we get the flow. No, not at all. But I'm saying it does. It's something that I think that the leaders in the EU are with the best political will.
They don't
change,
get it,
but
man.
we'll
You know,
have to
we had
see
this
if
thing
the,
where Macron was announced for 30 million for AI 2 weeks ago. And I just mentioned the $30 billion round that Anthropic just raised. I mean, how much was raised in the whole of European venture in last year? About 40 billion. Nearly the whole market in one deal.
It's a different game. I want to talk a bit, take up some more positive AI news. So David Stark from Ground Up Ventures, he's open sourced his OpenClaw instance, including the licenses for fund managers to be able to improve and work in their VC workflow. So he's connected all of his toolkits, his HubSpot, WhatsApp, LinkedIn, all of his messaging and servicing and back office toolkits to enable him to manage better deal flow, meetings, due diligence, reporting. I thought we've seen a number of people in our industry automating and using these incredible AI toolkits. I thought it was super cool that he's open sourced all of this. Lomax, would you use it? Where are you at? Because we spoke a few weeks ago and neither of us were super up on the AI toolkits, but would you use it?
So why don't we do this? Because I think the thing is, I think if you're a venture firm now, well, first of all, if you're a venture firm now and you're not using some form of AI in your business somewhere, then I think you're probably going to be out of business in the next few years, right? As a starting point.
any firm. I would remove the word or
Now,
the
then
letters
I think you
VC
have,
in
but
that.
but now, unlike a few years ago, right? So if you wanted to do this 5-6 years ago, you basically had to, unless you were technical yourself, you had to, or even then you probably didn't have the time if you were running the firm. You could do what EQT did, which is they started to build this thing called the Mother Brain, which they were using predominantly for sourcing. Now that became, I don't know actually how well that's worked for them, but if you were doing that 5-6 years ago, that was a very, very, very expensive build, like writing any code years ago, like a few years ago. And so a lot of venture firms couldn't do it. It was prohibitively expensive. Now, there's two things that have happened. You've either got off-the-shelf tools built by, Harmonic, Spectre, there's tons of these companies now. That's mainly for sourcing, or you can obviously start to do it yourself with natural language prompts, with Claude Code, with OpenClaw, etc. And so that's a really, really exciting time to be running a small venture firm with a very, very limited budget. Like anyone running a small business now, there's really cool, exciting things that you can do. And you intimately know your own processes. So you can start to work out what you can automate. Let's have a look at what David Stark at this fund actually did. I don't want to be like patronizing. I call it a bit cute. I think it's nice. I don't know whether I would use all of this stuff, to be honest. So first, 10 minutes before every meeting, a WhatsApp message arrives with full context on the participants from HubSpot, LinkedIn, and Crunchbase. That's pretty cute. That's quite nice, fine. I mean, you could just sit down 10 minutes before and just do the Googling yourself. Or what I do now is put all the information into an LLM. Second, the bot joins Google Meetings on its own, records them, extracts action items using Claude, and sends a summary by email. Okay, fine, nice. A new email with a deal comes in. There's a sort of process to get that into your HubSpot. That's pretty helpful if you're having a lot of inbound deal flow. And then they've open sourced this now. So those are some quite nice kind of features, I would say. And I think lots of firms have sort of built a variation of that themselves, or you can buy those on the open market. Yeah, I think it's necessary. For me, the most important thing as an early stage investor is seeing deals and winning deals, right? And winning deals is really a personal thing. I don't...
Unless you're Andreessen or Sequoia or Index.
Yeah, it's brand, but I sort of put brand and personal into the same thing. It's like what you stand for. Funnily enough, I actually did see a VC firm the other day that's built a product using AI that their founders can use for lead gen for new customers. So they actually... so that's actually pretty cool. That's an example of a firm trying to win a deal using, using a tool they've built with AI.
Creating value, being value add.
But actually, I mean, yes, and it is a friend of mine, but I went through it with him, and actually, they do win deals as a result of it because they do deliver value off the back of that. But further towards origination, sourcing is that's the kind of key. And this chap here, David Stark, didn't really talk about that with his Bob. If I can either we're working on stuff here at Outsized, or you can buy these things off the shelf to pick up signals for founders before they've even started companies.
But that's hygiene now, Lomax. It's already hygiene. This is the challenge that I have with this. If everyone has access to everyone and everyone's spamming
My
everyone,
big question,
it's like
many people have a software license from one of these companies. The moment someone puts up stealth on their LinkedIn or sends up another signal,
you get scoured. You get scraped the hell out of, yeah.
But I still think, Dan, there are ways to get that kind of information asymmetry down and actually meet. They're not even founders at that point. They're just individuals who might be in a position to start a company. I think that's very possible. And maybe Harmonic have not covered that yet, for example.
Yeah. Then they're pretty good. I mean, we've used all of them. We're a Harmonic customer.
Okay. Have you done many deals using Harmonic?
I mean, yeah, we've done 2.
Okay.
So I just think we are now already in a world where all of the VCs using these AI toolkits. There's one bit which is the back office, which I think let's just automate and get really slick at running back office. Anything that is forward facing and automatically pinging founders that are in stealth mode on LinkedIn, a connection request and an email. Maybe there's value in that.
Think so.
I just feel
I don't think you get I don't think you get alpha by doing what all the other VCs are doing.
I'll try and touch on both points, because I think the first point that Lomax touched about calling the things cute is that a lot of the work that talked about is workflow automation.
Yes.
And many of us, again, so I've been using Zapier, and I've had a lot of great Zaps which do exactly that. We have a call, the call gets transcribed automatically. The call then gets uploaded to the CRM in the right place, all the notes, boom, go into the CRM. And then if we're a bigger team, can we create other things into Slack? Sure. Again, I can program. I didn't need to program almost anything. Zapier is incredible in doing what it does. So that is more internal efficiency. I think what the AI does is probably makes us a lot more efficient and able to process a lot more deals. If you think about our work as sourcing, I think the sourcing becomes table stake, and maybe the picking, maybe we can review more companies. I think and remember, an alpha is a constant, the alpha isn't fixed. Whoever was using those signals 4 years ago, 5 years ago, first time I saw Spectre was 5 years ago,
Yeah.
probably had alpha for a few months or for a few years, right, while they were using those tools. And so I think if you want to be on the efficient frontier of the alpha, then you have to have an agent, right, running on OpenClaw or whatever platform you're developing that thinks and does those things for you, right? That agent develops its own tools, its own heuristics, to find those founders, approach them.
That's an interesting layer, AL. So you're saying just come up a layer and sit on top and let it work itself out.
Yeah, and which is I think what the smart, the advanced people who are now working on the efficient frontier of these things is having an army or small army of Claude bots or OpenClaw as it's called right now, taking out pieces of our work and delivering it to them.
Let's talk about the Munich Security Conference. This was the 62nd Munich Security Conference that took place this week in Munich, obviously. A bit of background. It was founded in 1963 by Ewald Heinrich von Kleist-Schmenzen, just to ruin my German friendships. A German aristocrat and resistance fighter who'd been part of the... Yeah, I meaningfully, casually, racistly offend everybody, I think. So he'd been part of the Stauffenberg Circle, which was an attempt to assassinate Hitler. So he had a very personal touch on building this security conference. It now assembles over 450 senior decision makers, and this year there were 40 heads of state included in that pot. I've seen it noted as the Davos for security wonks. Last year, JD Vance kind of cracked that transatlantic alliance with his speech. This year, I felt like Rubio was a bit more conciliatory, trying to maybe make some bridges or make some save some relationships. I'm not sure how happy Trump would have been about that, but we'll see. This year was branded pretty much under destruction and wrecking ball politics. All the kind of little sound bites that we would expect with the Americans doing what they're doing and Europe responding how it's responding. I love some of the speeches. I love listening to Callas on Europe doesn't need saving. MERS, we spoke about last week, I think, which is the old order is over. And you saw AOC and Gavin Newsom starting potentially to tee up their stakes for a presidential run. But I guess to bring it back down to us, I enjoyed watching and hearing and reading about the whole of the conference. But how do we pair it back to what we do? Startups, investing, Europe. Where are the opportunities? What should we talk about here? Lomax, what would you focus
I
on
think
first?
you could really geek out on the politics and geopolitics of this, but actually it's not really part of our remit today to do that. But I mean, stepping back, this was generally a very peripheral intelligence, security, defense minister event until last year when JD Vance really rattled the saber, saying, famously or infamously that Europe's biggest threat is the problem, enemy from within. I think personally Rubio carried that on. He was a bit more charming in his delivery, but I would ultimately say that...
I would never have heard those two words to put together, but sure.
I think he's basically saying the same thing. I think, what was Mertz clearly has woken up and, not drunk, who's woken up and smelled the coffee. So like he was sort of set the tone at the beginning of the conference. This is a continuation of what's been happening over the last 12 months. In terms of what it means for us is that, defense spending will only continue to increase. And even actually right off the back of Munich, Starmer has announced that in the UK, he would like to accelerate the increase of defense spending to 3%, which he'd kick back to next parliament, but he wants to bring it to this parliament. I don't know whether Keir Starmer's still going to be around, but he wants to exactly. So for context, he committed to take it up to 2.5% by 2027. 3% was deferred, but now that's been brought forward potentially. So I think like the Europeans, and you had some big deals, not big deals announced at the conference, but there's stuff happening in the background, right? So Stark just raised a lot of money from the Americans, actually, from Founders Funds. So robotics company or drones company in the US. In Germany.
Peter Thiel is in a European...
Well, that brings up a point,
exactly,
which is that Founders Fund, which was founded by Peter Thiel, who himself originally was from Germany, but clearly is an American billionaire. Boris Pistorius, the German defense minister, has come out and said he's very uncomfortable with giving German Bundeswehr contracts to Stark if Peter Thiel is on the cap table. So then we get into this whole sovereignty of cap table issue, which, by the way, some people have come out and said that the Germans are being a bit European about this. And I was like, well, actually, I think that's rubbish. As in, like, I know for sure that the Americans, for their defense contractors, worry about sovereignty. So why shouldn't the Europeans be allowed to worry about it too? I don't, honestly, I think it's like, I think like some people, you can't tell Europe that it needs to have sovereignty and then, instantly go and, beat them over the head when they start to worry about who's behind.
The challenge is they're not worried about the Chinese or the Russians. They're worried about the
but that's the whole.
Americans. So that this is the conversation. Right?
Helsing have just announced their new or second German resilience factory, which is now up and running and live. So all of these things are happening in the background. I think effectively the Munich Security Conference is more of the same. There's lots of stuff to go into, but ultimately, I think the Europeans, I don't think the Europeans get it properly yet, but they certainly get it more than they did before. And actually, Ursula von der Leyen did mention that they were going to look at the kind of common defense article in the European treaty, which is, I think, 27.4 or something, which is the equivalent of Article 5. Because at the moment, it's in kind of very like mealy-mouthed language. In fact, the exact language of it is, if an EU country is the victim of armed aggression on its territory, the other EU countries have an obligation to aid and assist it by all means in their power, which is it's a bit soft.
That could mean everything and nothing.
Well, it's like, here's some porridge oats.
Here's a sandwich. Here's for your troops on the front line.
So I think actually she has a point where she have a plan to bolster that up and make it a bit more like the Article 5 NATO provision, which basically obliges all NATO members to go and bail out another one. I mean, the Americans are still, I think Lindsey Graham, the US senator, was behind closed doors giving the Danish prime minister a lot of grief about Greenland. So that definitely is still going on in the background as well.
Really? Well, I mean, I remember her, she basically said, somebody asked her, has the Greenland issue been resolved with the States? And she just said no. It was like, it wasn't even politically, it was like, no,
well, I think
this has not been resolved.
Much the same at the political level, like people kind of get it more. I do, like if I was selling technology, you've got these big budgets, the German defense budget for 2026 is going to be 115 billion euros. Like how much of that is actually going to go into technology versus into barracks and recruiting and quite basic stuff that where money hasn't been spent for the last 30, 40 years. But clearly, look, Helsing and Stark are winning contracts. So, we'll see.
They're more of the same. So I guess there's nothing really to see here from the conference, except we are going to see more defense spend. And
also I would say, the Rubio conciliator. I don't think Rubio was really conciliatory.
I thought it just didn't sound as obnoxious as JD Vance. And maybe I'm projecting, as in JD Vance just jars me whenever he opens his mouth. He's so acidic and so unpleasant. And Rubio was not. He was a bit more political and a little bit softer and a little bit more, Europe and the US have always been friends. We're always going to stay friends. So that was maybe I'm being too kind. You have some health and bio good news. We've got Compass Pathways and Savo.
A couple of good updates this week. So Compass Pathways, which is a London-based listed company working on psychedelic medicines, which is actually one of the leaders in the world of something that it's an example of an area where Europe does take a lead, announced the readout of a second phase 3 clinical trial for using psilocybin, a synthetic version of psilocybin, which is the active ingredient in magic mushrooms, for use in TRD, treatment-resistant depression. So this is patients who've used all other existing avenues to cure their mental issue, their depression, are now have the option, or in these trials, were given doses of psilocybin or synthetic psilocybin and showed phenomenal improvement in their mental health.
No political kickback so far. I mean, it hasn't been regulated.
So as a reminder, clinical trials go phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. Phase 1 is efficacy. So phase 1 is safety, and then phase 3 is ultimately efficacy. This is now past everything. So this could really mean that actually this could be approved and on the market in probably 27, not in 26. So that'd be a pretty amazing thing if it happened.
That's quick.
Yeah. Well, it's quick. I mean, that started going through the clinical trials process 4 or 5 years ago, so not that quick.
Oh, 1936.
Yeah, well, yes. But there's hundreds of millions of dollars later. But I do think that that's a really, really cool thing. And there's a company called Savo Health, which has just put out also another good clinical trial.
Is that how you say it? Savo, is it?
Savo. That's working on CGM, so continuous glucose monitoring. They have a simpler, non-invasive patch. It's much easier to apply, because if you've ever used any of the Abbott or Dexcom CGMs, you have to. It's quite a painful needle.
Yeah, the big chunky thing. Yeah. It's like a claw, is it? It's like a crustacean clamped on the back
Exactly.
of your
Yeah.
arm.
So this is kind of a new product for that. And actually that's kind of a game changer if that comes through. So actually two things that are both pretty game changing on the device and on the drugs front coming out of Europe this week.
My deal of the week, very quickly, is Quantonation. So Quantonation is, I think it's the largest ever quantum fund in Europe raised. Yeah, and listen, I'm up for anything quantum
And actually,
fusion, super
there's
smart
been
AI.
a slew of there's another quantum fund that got announced recently called Fergun that announced, and a fund backed by IFO, which is the Danish government, that have raised, I think they raised up to $1 billion as well. So actually quantum has its own specific funds now. And that is a place where Europe has actually got some amazing teams.
This is what I mean. I think I've said this before. I think it's where we should double down. We should be doubling down on what we have, what we know, what we're good at, and quantum and fusion. We're good at it. Europe is
two of
baked
the
in
best
it.
funded teams in the US came out of Europe, right? So PsyQuantum came out.
Yeah. What came out of the UK?
Yeah.
When they Bristol and
PsyQuantum came out of Bristol, and INQ, Quantinium came out of Cambridge. Yeah. So
bring it on.
Well, I'm excited about my team.
Sorry,
that taught my own book. But actually, on this note, well, not on the quantum note, but huge seed rounds of $1 billion, up to $1 billion at a $4 billion pre-money valuation, led by
this is the ineffable.
Yes. Led by Sequoia, David Silver, who's behind all part of the team that developed AlphaGo, AlphaZero, and a key DeepMind architect. So he's left and he's being, this is a crazy, this kind of stuff. This is a sign of the maturation of the ecosystem, no? You never get $1 billion seed round in Europe until now. Yeah. So that's backed by Sequoia. Firms like NVIDIA, Google, and Microsoft are in talks to join the round too. And yeah, it's a new architecture. It's reinforcement learning and experience-driven intelligence. So not just scaling up LLMs, which other
experience-driven intelligence.
Yeah, there you go. So I think that's cool.
Eyal, have you got any deals of the week?
Yeah, the only one I was going to mention is I think the Netflix Warner Brothers going forward is a huge deal, really, because it releases the M&A valve all over the world, and I'm hoping that's going to be it's a watershed in terms of the FTC and the DOJ in America.
Is it going ahead?
Well, it looks like it's only waiting for shareholder vote right now. So from my understanding, at least, is from a regulatory perspective, once it goes ahead, I'm hoping that's going to be basically the FTC and the DOJ saying, okay, deals can happen now. And we're hoping that's going to restart the machinery of exit for VCs and PE. That's, again, the hope and the expectation.
And how much of that will come to Europe, I wonder? This little bit here.
Who knows?
Gentlemen, anything else before we clock off? Any last minute juicy nuggets or exciting things that you want to cover? In that case, my lovely humans, I will catch you all next week.